All right, welcome to the Tag Talks podcast. Today I'm joined by my good friend, former tag athlete, Andrew Pickett. How you doing, big guy?
I'm doing amazing. So much better now that I'm here with you.
Oh, hey, you know how to put a smile on my face. So let's just start us off with your name, position, where you're from, how long you've been training with me, and then kind of what current team and league you're in.
So position, offensive lineman. I play guard center. From Kitchener, Ontario. Went to the University of Guelph. That's where I met grammar. And then playing the CFL right now with the Ottawa Redblacks. And I trained at tag. I was with Grammar when he was the strength coach at Guelph. I also played with him, as I stated. Then when he opened up his own business, I went with him and then trained for him for the combine. And then this past season, actually, I stayed in Ottawa and worked out with the Ottawa trainers. So this was my first season kind of being away.
Breaks my heart. No, and we'll get back to all that stuff later, and we'll talk about kind of your story and how you've got there. But just to kind of get the ball rolling to start, we'll go with the quick 6 questions just to have some fun here. What's your favorite meal?
Favorite meal? My mom's spaghetti.
Mom's spaghetti. What's that? That reminds me of the Eminem. I was going to start rapping the Eminem song. I won't. I'll save you all. I'm not going to do that. Okay. Favorite exercise?
Between bench and squat.
Bench and squat. Least favorite exercise?
Rows.
Rows. Like barbell rows? Or like
Any
row,
kind of
like
row.
cardio row?
Any kind of cardio rows, barbell rows, single arm rows, bent over rows, chest supported rows. All of them, hate them.
Really? That's weird.
Yeah.
I never would have thought that. Okay. If you could play any other sport or another position, what would it be?
If I could do another position, 100%, been saying it since day one, free safety.
Yeah.
All day, every
You got
day.
the movement profile for that.
I'm telling you, if I just shed like 100 pounds, maybe 2, I'm there.
Okay, free safety it is. In your opinion, best sports movie of all time?
Ooh, that's a tough one. You know what? I've listened to other ones. I've heard Remember the Titans, heard Friday Night Lights, both great movies. I have to go Waterboy, end of the day.
You're going to
Stick
go
with my boy
Waterboy.
Adam Sandler.
You're going to go
Comedy,
Waterboy.
also good messages in there. All around, great time.
The Waterboy. Oh, what's the scene? Medulla oblongata. That you know that scene?
Oblongata. But Mama said. Yeah, I love it.
I was reading a book on like literal like neuroscience or whatever. I think I have it somewhere in my desk here. A couple weeks ago, and it said medulla oblongata, and I just started killing myself laughing. Taylor looks over. She's like, "Why are you laughing so hard? You're reading." And I'm like, "Man, I'm just thinking of this scene from Waterboy." Yeah, I don't know.
Like in my psychology classes, we talk about it. And I remember one of them, they were talking about it, and it's like, that's not what the professor in Waterboy said. And it's like, hey, where do I go from here? Because Mama and the professor lied.
Yeah, I'm so lost right now. Okay, and then just to wrap it up, this is like not the most direct question because you can have multiple answers, but like favorite podcast, books, blogs. What kind of content do you dive in on?
So I'm actually super new to the podcast scene. I've kind of avoided them because they kind of blew up and I just didn't jump on the train. But I've been listening to 10-minute podcasts pretty recently with Will Sasso, Chris D'Elia, and Brian the Kid Callen.
Okay.
It's inappropriate, just humor, and it just kills me. They're quick, and it's just like you never know where it's going to go.
10-minute podcast. That's what it's called. I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Aaron McRae sent it to me, a buddy. And so I was like, oh, okay. He's like, one of these characters, like Will Sasso, his humor and his laugh remind me of you. So I was like, okay, I'll check it out. Like usually when people say that, that's not true. And then I'm just dying by this guy, man. He kills me.
Yeah, I'm gonna check it out. I'm gonna take the dog for a walk after this, so I'll rip through a few 10-minute podcasts. What about books?
There's one.
Oh,
books. I just read a good book called Fall of Giants. It's based on World War I. Really interesting one. I'm reading. What's it called? Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy right now. Thoroughly enjoying that one.
What do you think of it?
Man, it's different and it takes a little bit to like pick it up, but like I'm liking it.
Isn't that? I think I talked to you about that last off season, right?
You did, and that's actually what got. Like I went out and bought it because I was like, man, like I have to read it.
I told you, man. I said it's like honestly, you have to have the right sense of humor to kind of get it, and
yeah,
it's goofy as all hell, but Good book. Good book. I listened
And
to
like
it.
the thing is it's quick. So you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm reading, then all of a sudden like I'm done a chapter. It's not like, man, I still have 50 pages to finish the chapter. I have no motivation. It's like, man, I just read 3 chapters. I'm gonna keep reading.
Yeah. The thing is, I listen to it. So I I read a lot and listen to a lot of podcasts, but I also listen to a lot of audiobooks. And that one I listened to, and it was hilarious, man. I loved it. I loved it. I never actually got around to reading any of the other ones, but there's a few books in that series.
Yeah. And so like when I went to Chapters, it was on sale. They had all of them on sale, like one big book. So that's what I've been crushing.
Ah, there you go. So you can report back to me on the second 2 and let me know how it goes. Anything else on the podcast book? I know I kind of cut you off. You were going to say something again about the 10-minute podcast before I asked you about books.
I was gonna try and find some ones for you to check out on your walk, but other than that one, that's definitely, some people like it, some people find it very offensive and hate it. Like it's,
Oh, you know my sense of humor. You know I'm gonna love it.
there's one where it's like, what animal would you fight, or would you want to like kill you or something? And it just like Will Sasso on that one kills me. I
So
cry.
the question is, what animal do you want to kill you?
Yeah. So if you were stuck and you were like, an animal's about to kill you, and the way it started is one guy got mauled by a tiger in the zoo, and it was like
in
one of
real
them.
life?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like somebody on the news got mauled by a tiger and died.
Oh.
And so they said, well, what animal would you want to kill you? And so like the one guy says like, oh, I'd want some kind of big cat because like they can find your jugular and kill you really quick. The one guy's just being weird with his answer. And then Will Sasso's like, you know what? I'd want a gorilla. And just comes up with this absurd like storyline. I don't want to ruin it for you and ruin the punchline, but oh, it kills me every time. Just think, I've rewatched it at least 5 times now. That's 50 minutes of my life dedicated to one podcast.
Hey, no, well, I'm checking that one out. So there you go. There's a new addition to my questions at the beginning of the podcast. I'm going to start asking, what animal do you want to kill you? So
there you go.
If you could pick any animal to die from, pick it. What are you picking?
Oh, grizzly bear.
Grizzly bear? Why?
There's this period in my life where I was actually like deathly terrified of grizzly bears, so I like had to research them nonstop just to make sure they weren't going to attack me in my home when I was a kid. And so one of the things is that when grizzly bears fight, they actually try and like go for each other's skull and crush skulls.
Nice.
So I assume if they went for that, that'd just be real quick.
Nice. Okay, grizzly bear. I think myself, I'm going wolf. That's my favorite animal. You have you seen the movie The Gray with
Yeah,
Liam
I
Neeson?
have.
You know, at the end where he takes those like little liquor bottles and he makes those. Yeah, I'm going full on brawl with the wolf. And I don't care. Like that thing kills me. That's fine. But I'm putting up a fight. We're going.
Don't get me wrong. I tango with this grizzly bear. Like I love it, but I don't think it would last too long. I don't have high hopes. I'm walking out of there.
Hit him with your best jump set. Surprise him a little bit.
Keep him off guard.
Come at me, bear, and jump set him. He wouldn't even know. All right. That's a random detour, but I'm really happy we took it. That was funny as shit. So to kind of get back onto our regular programming here, talk to us a bit about you, like your story. Obviously, when you were a kid, you were deathly afraid of grizzly bears, but you were also probably playing football. So, when did you start? How long you been playing for? Talk to us, Team Canada, the recruiting process. Like, let's hear everything you went through on to get to where you're at now.
All right. So when I started out with the deathly afraid of grizzly bears and everything like that, I was actually scared of a lot as a kid. I was a pretty wimpy kid. If there's a storm, I was checking the Weather Channel for tornadoes. There was, noises outside. I'm pretty sure we were getting attacked by wolves. Like, it was a lot of stuff. And so I played hockey. My dad actually wanted me to be a hockey star. And, like, I was out there and, like, I had a good shot, but I was only playing house league. And then I moved up to select in my last year. And, like, I had, like, an okay shot and, like, could skate okay, but, like, just never really fell in love with it. And then a couple of my buddies started getting into football, and they're like, oh, like, Andrew's a big dude. Like, sign him up for football. My dad's like, man, this can be just a waste of money if I sign my child up for football. He's not going to like it. So I kept begging him. And then finally one of his friends was like, oh, like, you got to sign your son up. My son's playing. Like, let's play. And he's like, okay, I'll give it a shot. fell in love with it instantly. So that was grade 6. Summer grade 6 going to grade 7 is when I first started. Fell in love with it instantly. You know, I don't know what it is, but he's like, it's weird watching you out there because you won't be anything aggressive in hockey, but out there you're the most aggressive person. And it's like, I don't know. So started there. Had a really influential coach and one of the biggest influences on my life and just one of the biggest impacts overall. His name was Glenn Ferguson. And after one of my first couple practices, I remember him coming up to my dad and I and being like, you know, you got a lot of potential. You're doing really good. And like, if you stick on this path of learning and listening, like you're going to be an All-Canadian one day. Like I'll call it right now. You're going to be an All-Canadian. I was like, wow, like that's having that like confidence in my corner. Like that's pretty good and cool to hear. And
Sorry,
then it kind of also like,
this was still in grade 6?
yeah.
Man, shout out Coach Ferguson, man. That guy had a crystal ball.
Yeah, man, he was awesome. And he was just awesome in the sense of like, he knew how to teach. He knew how to get the kids, like get us laughing, keep us interested. And then also with that, it's like, man, like I want to keep improving because like I know one day I want to get there. So did that, played Twin City Minor Tackle Football Association Predators is what they were called at the time. So like when you had to write checks to like rent out equipment, you had to put like the huge name. They've since shortened it just to Twin Cities, which I think they should have done all along. So that was just a wild.
That was a couple of decades for them to figure that out, eh? You think we got too many words in our title?
And the thing is like they'd give you like golf shirts and they would stitch on like TCM, TFA. It's like that's not awesome. That's not awesome.
Any freaking letters in your acronym there? That's
Yeah.
hilarious. All right, keep going. So you were playing for Twin Cities?
Played for Twin Cities growing up. Played in couple all-star games.
What high school?
Went to Resurrection Catholic Secondary School.
Big shout out.
Phoenix, baby, for life. That was a good time. Met a lot of guys there. You know, thankfully I've been lucky my whole life just to have great, incredible coaches who have supported me the whole way through. So, you know, at high school I had Coach Cardillo, Coach Schneider, and they both like took a liking to me and like really wanted to work with me to get me better. And when I moved up, I had Coach Armour, and he was just a beauty. He played at Laurier back in the day when they won the Vanier, and he was just a good dude who like always kind of took me under his wing, like whether it be life, school, just chatted up. And then I played Team Ontario, played Team Canada, played in the All Canadian Gridiron All-Star Bowl a couple of years. And then with that, so that was run by a guy named Ron Diaz. And he actually ran an all-star camp that used to be called, or used to be a thing. I don't know if it still is. It might be. But it was pretty huge. And they would have like coaches from like down in the States come up. They'd always have like Rice University coaches there, a couple D2 schools there. They had a coach from the Rams there. Like they would have like big name schools and like guys would get offered. And so one of my coaches, Adam Ziegler, he was like, man, like I'm helping coach at this camp. And I was in grade 9. He's like, why don't you just come out for, you know, a couple days and like, we'll sign you up late and you can come out and play. So I was like, okay. So came out and it was kind of scary because it was like, you know, there's a bunch of older guys there. There's a bunch of American coaches there. But Coach Mike and Coach Bertoya were running the offensive line. So that's actually where I met Coach Mike McDonald from the University of Guelph. And then Coach Bertoya there too, who's now the head coach of Waterloo. I just remember going there and being like, me and my buddy Woodsy, we drove down, we roomed together, and we were not ready for anything. It was 3-day practices. We came with like no food for like night. We were just bored out of our, like we didn't know what to do. We were like, our bodies were so sore. But yeah, like played against these high school guys, and it was like I was competing, and it was fun times. And then told Coach Mike and Coach Bertoya at the end, like, yeah, I'm going into grade 10 next year. And they're like, man, this guy, what? So I was like, okay, maybe I have a life beyond this. So tried to go down to the States for university, did a couple things back in like grade 12. But unfortunately, nothing really panned out. Got talked to by a couple schools. But then also committed to University of Guelph, and I don't regret that one bit. I love that. every bit about that
Yeah,
decision.
I'm very, very happy that you made that decision to come to University of Guelph. You've been you're first and foremost, you were a great player, even better teammate, and been a really good friend of mine for a long time. But there's a bunch of things that stuck out with kind of you going through that first chapter of your story, and just for you guys listening, like that's just the start. There's so much more to Andrew Pickett than what he just talked about there in his football journey, and we'll talk about that later. But we're gonna again kind of free ball a bit here. But I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me when you were kind of going through your youth football and your early high school experience is like you name dropped a lot there in terms of coaches, like, and you talked so much about your coach Ferguson and the impact he had on you. Like, there's obviously been a lot of coaches that have played a part in your process to get where you are. What do you think are like the qualities that make a great coach?
Man, there's a lot of things. I've always been like, there's tons of different coaching strategies. You'll get guys who are like hard asses. You'll get guys who are, always looking for you to be better, who don't take like, will never say good job. You'll get guys who say good job over too much, and like then all of a sudden you're getting your tires boosted. I was always a big fan of like players, coaches. I was a big fan of like Glenn Ferguson. He was willing to work with me, but I was also a big fan of coaches who always had something to coach. So like, yeah, you're doing really good. And sometimes you get coaches who are just like, yeah, man, like that was a great job. And it's like, okay, but like I want to keep improving. Like I want to get better. Like I don't want to just sit here and like, yeah, I'm doing really good. Like I want to, like I'm always trying to improve myself. So like, where can I improve myself? Especially growing up, because like when you're a little kid, there's only so much you can coach. And like I've coached little kids since, trying to like give back to the sport. And it's sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know how people dealt with this.
Oh yeah.
And it's like other times it's like, man, this is amazing. I love helping kids. But sometimes it's like I don't know how to get through to them. And so for a coach, it's just like being able to like willing to work with the players and like putting that extra effort with the players to really try and get them to where they need to go.
Yeah, no, and I think there's definitely been a lot of coaches throughout my experience as an athlete that I've had some good, some bad throughout the years, but I agree with you. Like I hated the coaches that were just like, you're the man, like that was the best, like oh my god, you're killing it, dude. It's like, hey, like I don't care to hear that. Like how am I getting better? Like,
Yeah.
give me something. Like, hey, I appreciate that, and it's good to know that I'm on the right track, but like what's the next thing? So it's like those coaches that kind of dance that fine line between being like a player's coach, like you said, like super supportive, caring about you more than just an athlete, but also not so obsessed with trying to be your friend, and also making sure that they're directing you in the right place, directing you in the right direction, and giving you kind of like actionable, real coaching advice, because that is kind of their job, right? So no, that was just one thing that stuck out for me when you were talking. Is like, obviously, like you're not trying to take all the credit that you're just some genetic freak that got to where you are. Like you even mentioned so many different coaches, so I thought that'd be kind of a cool question to ask you.
I could spend this whole episode just calling out coaches and what they did for me, and even like teachers, like everything. Like I could just spend this whole episode just giving names, but yeah, like
no,
you can't just sit here and be like, yeah, it was all me, because the support staff of having a coach behind you and really pushing to get better, that's a big thing. And like thankfully another thing too is I had my dad as a coach. Actually, after Glenn Ferguson, my dad was the O-line coach, and so like that was good because we just have long conversations about like, okay, what do we need to work on, where do we go from here? But it was also like, he was hard on me. He didn't want me to sit back and think I was good. He wanted me to keep working and like, okay, always be thirsty for more.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Did your dad play football?
He did. Growing up, so I actually came from a big football family.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So my dad came from a family of 10 brothers.
Jesus.
Of those 10 brothers, the oldest, and then my dad and the twin, who are the youngest, were the only ones under 6 feet. My uncle Bob, he got a scholarship to the University of Syracuse for football, went to University of Syracuse. My uncle Bernie got a scholarship to University of Wisconsin as a running back, went there for a year, then came back to Laurier and played at Laurier. My uncle Tim was a defensive back, He played at Waterloo and Laurier. He got drafted in the first round to go to the CFL. My dad he went to York, played 1 year at York, and then wanted to move back home, so came back home.
That's
So,
unreal.
yeah.
Yeah, so big football history there, and like you said, a few of your uncles went down to the States, and you talked about how you kind of had some opportunities there. What was that like? Like you said, you made the decision obviously to go to University of Guelph, but I know that you had some interest going to the States. What was that process like, being a Canadian trying to explore options south of the border? And then was that heartbreaking for you to not settle, but to end up having to go to a Canadian university? Like, how was that?
The process was weird. It was a lot of like freeballing, or not like freeloading, trying to figure out how to go. Cause at the time we had Tyler Varga, who was going to the States. But then other than that, we didn't really hear of a lot of people who went to the States. Like, I didn't know the processes I should do. I didn't know who I should contact, kind of how to get there. And I remember too, we had, like, my school, we had a lot of people, my high school had a lot of people who went down to the States for, like, we had this family who like would go down for field hockey, track and field. Like, they were called they were the Buttengers, and they like got scholarships to the States all the time. And there was this lady that helped them get there. And like, she would come in and do talks, and I'd go up to her and be like, hey, like, can you help me? I'm trying to get a football scholarship. And she's like, oh, it's really tough to get a football scholarship unless you're willing to go to the like Canada universities. I don't know how much I can help you. So it's like, okay, like, it's tough there because you don't have a lot of people having confidence that like this kid can go to the States too. And so then, like, kind of got talking to a couple people, like Vince Luciani, I think it is. He was out of Laurier, but he was coaching at Ohio. He's a Canadian guy. And so one of my summer coaches was like, yeah, come see, like, this guy wants to talk to you. He works down at Ohio. Come to a camp. So I was like, okay. Then I had another previous coach who was actually at University of Buffalo, Dylan Guy. And he's like, hey, come to this camp. Send them your film. Let's see what we can do. I was like, hey, this is weird and scary. And so, like, went down to the States and, like, tried to do that stuff. And then eventually came down to, like, a couple of schools, like, saying, we've seen your highlight film, but we just don't know the quality of players you're going against. Like, yeah, you're dummy everyone, but like, we don't know. We can't be like, oh, that guy's a 3-star recruit, like we've seen him, or like, oh, that guy's like a 1-star. Like, we honestly just don't know what you're going against. So they're like, oh, can you go to, like, do you want to go to a prep school down here in the States? And I was like, man, I don't really have the money for that, and I also don't know kind of the steps I should take to get there. Like, I don't know if that's really going to work out for me at the end, or if that's something that people do and doesn't end up going well. So I didn't know how to do with that. And I always also wanted to be the guy who from Resurrection High School went down to the States. So it was going through with that and trying to figure out my way. And then, thankfully I did have my uncles, but my uncles also told me, like, it is a religion down there, and it is different. Like, university, they come to play, and like, they want to play. Like, it's not, oh, we're here to like practice or whatever. Like, no, it's work, and it's hard work, and they're looking to take your job, and they're looking to, be the best they can be. And like, they're not afraid of it. And it's like, okay, that's kind of scary and intimidating. And then actually in my grade 12 year after I committed to University of Guelph, I got a call from the Miami Hurricanes offensive line coach. And he was like, hey, I got a call from Ron Diaz, who said, I have a friend at University of Miami. He's the O-line coach. Call him right now. He's looking for guys. And so I was like, okay. So called him, and he was like, yeah. Like, it was very business. It was very, what are your numbers? What does everything look like? How much can you squat this? Many times can you bench this? Send me your game film. It's like, okay. So did all that. And then called him again. He's like, yeah, I saw your game film. I need something spectacular to show my coach. Like, excuse me, like, this is, and like, my game film was like from grade 10 and grade 11. He's like, I need something really spectacular to show my coach. Like, do you have anything recent, like, spectacular? And I was like, man, I don't know. I was like, this is my football coach at high school. He's like, I'll call your football coach, see if we can put something together. So I was like, okay. He's like, do you play track and field? I was like, yeah. Or do you play any other sports? I was like, yeah, I did track and field. I played hockey. He's like, man, what, you were just a bruiser in hockey? What were you? And I was like, man, I kind of played like this. He's like, oh, what were you in track and field? How far did you throw this thing? I threw it about this much. Was that meters? Like feet? I was like, I don't know, man. And it's like, it was so business. It was kind of eye-opening and like also like intimidating, because you're like, man, like this is football. Like, it's business, baby. And then so left him for a little bit, and then I was like, okay, I haven't heard anything back. So then I called him, and he was like, hey, man, like, I was waiting for you to call like a couple days ago. I haven't got your game film yet. And then also, like, we had a change of events. We were down in recruiting before where we didn't think we were going to get any offensive linemen. And now all of a sudden we had one guy who wasn't going to make grades, who brought his grades up and now was going to like be eligible to get signed. And then another guy who we were sure was going to sign someplace else, ended up signing with us. So like, we don't need any offensive linemen right now, but like, can you go back to high school, or like, what can you do there? And I was like, I'm ready to move on. So I'll probably go play at University of Guelph. And so went to University of Guelph and like was excited, but also that first little bit, like I couldn't watch NCAA football anymore for my first year of university, because it was like, man, it just, what could have been. And it was tough. But then kind of once you got going, then it was like, man, I'm still improving myself and I'm still going to get to where I want to go through football.
Yeah, many roads lead to Rome, right? Have you ever heard of that phrase? So it's, yeah, no, I like I said, obviously, like I sucked on the grand scheme of things coming out of high school. So it was like, I was lucky enough to get recruited by a couple of universities in Ontario, not University of Miami. So I was kind of interested to hear how that process went for you. I think that's one thing that, a lot of people don't really like get is how different it is in the States, like how different football is. Like you said it a few times, like it's business. Like, man, the way they pump prospects out it's an absolute factory. Like you said, they have all those measurables, 40 time, 10-yard split, 225 reps, broad jump. Like they have all these things that they're looking for. And if you don't, because there's just so many recruits, if you don't check the right boxes, like it doesn't even matter, man. They won't even watch your tape. They'll just throw you into the discard pile right away. So I think, like for Canadian kids trying to go to the States, we've said many roads lead to Rome. I've been involved in the football world for quite some time now. I don't know, when did I get involved in football? 2007. So 13 years. I've seen lots of people, go to the States by going to doing like their high school in Canada and then going to prep school for a year in the States. I've seen people go to like JUCOs. There's so many different ways. Like our buddy Royce, his little brother, who's now at Alabama, like John moved down there in grade 9. Like he did all his high school there. And obviously, he's on the Alabama's roster right now. So that worked out well for him. But yeah, like you say, it's just like I just don't think people really grasp how vastly different the football landscape is between America and Canada.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like
go ahead.
Also, other thing is like, in Canada, it's not really known how to get recruited down the States. Like you kind of find out tips and tricks after, where like, you want to get your high school coaches sending out game film and emailing people. You want to send out emails and like game film and get highlight films going right away and start sending them out to coaches. And it's like, this was just too much. Like I didn't know what to do. I didn't know to keep an updated highlight film. I didn't know to keep, sending and hassling all these coaches. I thought it was like they'll kind of contact you if they want kind of thing. So yeah.
I actually know you just said that and it reminded me. You want to hear something super funny, man? When I was like I said, I had no hope in hell going to the States for football. I wasn't that good on the grand scheme of things. But when I was in grade 9, like I had never played football before grade 9. I remember I don't know why I chose Arizona State University, but I somehow literally grade 9, I tracked down their linebacker coach's email, and I sent him an email just being like, hey, like I'm grade 9, I'm 5'6", 170 pounds. If I wanted to eventually come and play in the States, like what do I have to do? No response.
Oh, I was gonna say, did he reply?
No way. They probably printed that email out and put it on their corkboard in the coach's locker room, and they all laughed at it. They're like, look at this idiot. Kid's 5'5" and 170 pounds asking about playing linebacker. Like, we should just bring him on a trip and beat him up. That's probably what they thought. I completely forgot that I did that. And then when you were just talking about like how people didn't know how to go about that, that memory came out of the vault and I thought about it. So thought I'd share. That's funny. Yeah, Arizona State. I was pretty much almost a Sun Devil, you know.
And then you turned out into an absolute animal at University of Guelph.
Yeah. Some might say animal, some might say scrub, who knows. So things fell through with the University of Miami, or really maybe never even got off the ground with the University of Miami, however you want to look at it. But you ended up at University of Guelph. First year, like, you know, obviously you were a big name recruit coming in. Like, walk us through your time at Guelph.
So first year I came in and I had all these like high expectations of myself. Like, okay, I want to be, you know, I want to be good. Like, obviously I want to be good. I want to keep improving. I want to be one of the best. And then it was like, I didn't really have like a game plan of like, okay, how do we get here? It's just, man, I want to just be the best. And like, so first year I ended up being like the sixth man on the offensive line, like the backup if anyone went down. And I remember sitting before games and like I don't know why, like looking back now, it's like, I don't know like what I was struggling with the playbook. But back then it was like something wasn't clicking. Like, I don't know what it was, whether it was the new schemes or what. But I remember sitting there like in games being like, man, I am so terrified right now to go in. Like, if my number gets called, I am terrified. I'm like just freaking out. And like just like starting to lack confidence in myself like as the year went on, because you're just like, man, I'm not prepared. Like, I'm sitting here hoping I don't get put in a game because like I think I'll just be a liability out there. Like, this isn't showing good on me. And like I'm not the best. Like, I can clearly and definitively say that. Like, how am I not the best yet? And it was just like, it was improving, but it was like, man, this just isn't getting to where I want to go. And so it was weird, and it was adjustment period, and it was scary. And I remember like one of my first plays in, like one of my first games where I got like a lot of playing time. One was against Queens, and I actually did pretty good that game. So like I was pretty proud of that one. But the other one was against University of Ottawa, at Ottawa, and our left guard went down. And I remember going in, and we had they had a defensive lineman, Torre, who's now on Redblacks with me.
Yeah.
I remember going, and everyone's like, "Oh, this guy's an animal. Like, be careful." Okay, and I went in, and I had Nesbitt, who was our center, tell me one thing, and then our tackle asked me another question, and I didn't know how to answer, so I just sat there silently, and then just stood there, and I got pancaked by ET. It was terrible. It's just like, man, I just looked like a scrub.
That's funny.
So yeah, so first year was, you know, it was a learning. It was an adjustment period of like balancing football and classes and figuring myself out there. And then second year, I kind of came in and I was like, okay, it's time to start coming up with a plan of how we want to improve. Okay, let's start here. This is what we didn't like last year. This is what we're going to improve, like work to improve on last year. This is how we're going to do it. And so started playing. And then I'd also do, thankfully Coach Mike kind of implemented this, but then also I take him up on it whenever possible, where, you know, come in and watch one-on-one film with him, you know, after, like, it could be after every practice if you wanted, it could be after games, it could be after whatever. And we'd kind of go and break things down and like, okay, this is what we're working to improve on this week. Okay, did we improve on it from like last week? Yep, we did. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Or like, no, we didn't. Okay, where do we want to go from here? And he was really like patient and working with me. And then thankfully a couple weeks in, we played York and I got to start in that game because of injury, and then kind of held on to it the rest of the season, ended up becoming a second team all-star and was pretty pumped up. And then third year came and I kind of got a bit ahead of myself in the sense that I kind of got a big head and like instead of thinking, how can I improve myself? It was like, I'd start making little mistakes in practice and being like, yeah, well, I'm better than that mistake. Like, I don't need to worry about it. And then those little mistakes would start adding up, and like, you know, my growth curve that should have been exponential from second year instead started kind of plateauing a little bit, because instead of me taking in all this coaching being like, yeah, it's like, no, I'm not going to make that mistake come game day. we're like, yeah, I don't need to take that code because that's like a basic point and I don't need it. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, these basic points are adding up and like we're flatlining. And then going in the off season, the third year, ended up slipping on ice one practice and tearing my MCL. So I missed the East-West Bowl, which is like a big recruiting thing. For those of you that don't know who are watching, it's like a recruiting thing where CFL guys get to come together and like CFL recruits come together and you get selected and you get to play in this game and kind of show off your skills. So I got injured just before that and unfortunately couldn't show up. And that was tough. And then I was like, okay, where do we go from here? Okay, well, we need to improve ourselves because clearly last year we didn't improve ourselves, and kind of give the head a shake and realize, okay, let's get back. Let's be hard on ourselves. Let's not just accept mediocrity of the smallest thing. Like, let's not just like, oh, that's a small thing. Like, no, it happened. Fix it right away instead of like letting them build up. Like, okay, now we're moving on to more complex things. Like, let's not accept failure. Let's work and strive for greatness. Mm-hmm. And each day it was like, okay, let's build ourselves up. Let's work at this. Let's work at this. And then, I think fourth year had the best season I've ever had and really developed and like kind of still didn't reach the peak yet, but it was still like growing and showing off my skills and becoming a good football player and listening and breaking myself down and setting goals for myself of like, where do I want to be this game? What do I want it to be like? Okay. And then also, got a huge win of confidence in fourth year and kind of realized like, why, like, I'm not coming into games confident because I don't have confidence in myself. How can we fix this confidence? So started like, instead of like going into a game being like, oh, I'm afraid of getting beat by this guy. Like, why would I get beat by this guy? Being like, okay, like have confidence that you've practiced all week and you've worked on this all week. Now this week, it's not going to beat you. Like you're going to beat it, and just building myself up. And then actually got put on this top 20 CFL recruits all through the season. And then got selected to go down to the States for all Canadian Gridiron Showcase and compete against, NFL's like caliber players and guys who were being recruited to go to the NFL from smaller schools and some big schools and go compete in that. And like, it was cool because it was like, man, I'm going down to the States to compete in front of NFL scouts. It's also terrifying. Like my roommate was from Auburn. Thankfully, he was a great dude. And he's like, oh, like, where are you from? It's like, man, I'm from Guelph up in Canada. It's like, oh, I'm from Auburn. And it's like, this is scary. Like you're an animal.
You play in the SEC. That's cool.
Yeah. Like he played at Florida State and then went to Auburn. And it was like, that's insane. And like, I remember too, like before our first practice, we kind of had breakfast and then had a little bit of time and then go to practice. And I was just sitting there, like looking at my helmet, like, holy smokes, what am I doing here? Yeah. And then he was like, man, like, you okay? I was like, oh, I'm just pretty nervous right now. He's like, oh man, like, what are you nervous for? I was like, well, like you're a big name school. You're used to this. Like, I'm just a little nobody from up in Canada. Like, I don't know what I'm doing here kind of thing. And he was like, oh man, you know what? He's like, I'm nervous too. I was like, oh, he's like, but you got to keep looking yourself in the mirror and keep telling yourself, like, I can do this. I believe in myself. Like, even if you don't believe it, you got to keep telling yourself until you finally do believe it. I was like, oh, he's like, I mean, look at us. Like, I got selected to play in this game. You got selected to play in this game. Like, you might have come from a small school, but we're both still playing here. I was like, yeah, that's a fair point. And then he did something that was, like, kind of cheesy, but also, like, had a huge impact on me. He actually took, like, an Auburn sticker off his helmet and put it on mine. He's like, there, now you went to a big school, too. You don't have to worry about that. It's like, dang, yeah, man.
Like you said, like that's cheesy as all hell, but that's unreal. Like in the moment when you're kind of tripping balls about to go into this big showcase, that gesture from that dude, that probably changed everything for you. You went from 100 to 0, just completely calm and ready to go just because of one simple thing that guy did.
Yeah, 100%. And then, also with that, like there was ups and downs, but it's like, hey, there's going to be ups and downs because it's a learning curve. So like we went in and we started out with like one-on-ones and it was like, hey, one-on-ones went like a lot better than I expected. Like that was actually pretty good.
Maybe except for your first rep.
No, that was inside run.
That was inside run. I remember you texted me that night and you're like, dude, my first rep was awful.
Did I ever send you that clip?
No, but you told me about it.
I have to send you that clip, man. I still watch that to this day because it's like, man, that was just magnificent. So anyways, did one-on-ones. I was pretty pumped about that. And then we went to inside run, and I was like, okay, things are different here. What are we doing? So I was center, and it was like, okay, I don't know if like these angles are a lot different. Like there's no yard. And then all of a sudden it was like, hut. It's like, oh, okay. So I kind of like walked, and the linebacker just came right downhill, and just I was feet in the air, like, oh my gosh. I just got lit up. I was like, I didn't even know like offensive lineman got hit like that. Like, oh my gosh. And I was like, hey, we got to get up and just shake it off and keep improving. Like, that's a big learning experience.
Yeah, your eyes are like, one's looking down, one looking up, and you're like, all right, next rep.
The worst part is you know that like that picture of JJ Watt, and he like scratched his nose and it's like bloody, and like it's like, man, he's a badass. I had that same thing, but it was like, man, everyone knows it's from me just getting lit up. Like,
yeah, JJ Watt's got that because he probably just like made the hugest TFL without a helmet on and got kicked in the face, and you've got this little scar and you're bleeding, and you're like, oh, I just got lit up.
Yeah, so that's like, okay, there we go. And then, but thankfully after that, like, you know, learned from it. It was embarrassing, but took it as a learning experience and kept working and improving myself. Then I knew linebackers came hard, then you keep going hard. Like,
well, like we said, right? Like that's part of how the game's different. Like you're talking about, you know, when you're lined up, oh, my angles are different. We don't have the yard, blah, blah, blah. Like American football is the fields are smaller, right?
mm-hmm.
And because of that, everything comes downhill so much faster. And yeah, I remember I was killing myself laughing that day when you texted me, because like, you know, obviously that was pretty much right around the start of when we started working together, like in a training sense. That was when I was the strength coach at Guelph. We had just started, you know, the combine training and getting ready for the CFL national combine. And then you went down. This was before the combine. Yeah. This was like February, wasn't it?
January, February, or it was in January, actually.
I was going to say, because it was before the NFL draft. So, yes, or before the NFL combine even. So yeah, that would have been like really like right at the start of us working together, specifically prepping for the CFL, right? We had been working together since August, but that was just kind of getting ready for the season and in-season training and all that kind of stuff. So I was like super jacked up. I was so excited for you. I'm like, oh, he's going to go down there. He's going to kill it, whatever. I get that first message. It's like, yo, I got my ass lit up by a linebacker. Do you remember who it was? Did he end up going anywhere?
I don't remember who it was. And like, I don't remember like his, like, it was honestly just like, I didn't even like look in his eyes and like, okay, the linebacker. I just remember like, okay, he's coming at me. Like, just get ready to like, just make a block. And it was just boom. It's like, okay.
I'm dead.
Okay.
Okay. So that's kind of, you know, we kind of glossed over a bunch of stuff over your career. One thing we didn't mention was, you know, your coach Ferguson from grade 6 did end up being correct with you being an All-Canadian. Did he not?
He did.
What year were you an All-Canadian?
In my 4th year, I got first team OUA and first team All-Canadian guard. So yeah,
Boom.
Because the biggest thing too is like kind of at that moment, especially kind of going from 3rd year where you kind of plateau a little bit to 4th year, is, you know, everyone says you have a lot of potential. You have potential to be great. Like you're good. You got potential. But it's like, man, potential is just what could happen.
Yeah.
It's not what's going to happen. And so you kind of got to, okay, like he thinks I'm going to have the potential to be an All-Canadian. Okay, well, I'm not just going to sit back and accept that. Like, no, I got to work at being an All-Canadian. It's not going to be, nothing's going to be handed to you.
Yeah. So I wanted to make sure that we touched on that to give Coach Ferguson the shout out that he deserves, and talking about that you actually were an All-Canadian. If we want to backtrack real quick for a second, I think the one thing, like when I'm listening to you talk about your story and you're kind of going through 1st year to 2nd year to 3rd year to 4th year, it's like, it almost sounds kind of like, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, it almost sounds like you kind of went through some different cycles there, where it's like 1st year is like your head was spinning. Everything was so scary. You had no idea, you know, how to go about things. 2nd year, it was like, all right, we're going to break this down into specific steps. Each week, I'm going to have specific things that I'm working with. I'm going to sit down with Coach Mike once a week and watch video, and we're going to come up with the specific things. And, you know, you see this huge growth in 2nd year. And then 3rd year, it's almost like, you get back to that spinning point where you're like, oh, you know, you maybe let the foot off the gas a little bit and you're starting to feel yourself maybe a little too much. But then again, fourth year, it sounds like you've gotten back to that same cycle of second year where you're like, I'm breaking it down into what are the specific things that I have to do this week for this opponent and whatever. So would you say that's a kind of a good synopsis there?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And then because I was willing to break things down and work on things, and I could see improvement in those second and fourth year, then the confidence came too, which is a big thing.
Yes. Well, the few things. So the one thing that I always try and teach athletes, and you know, I think this is the third kind of interview with athletes that I've had. We've talked about this on all three podcasts. It's like, man, success is all about the process, right? It's all about the things that you're actually doing to get to the outcome you're looking for. So in first year, it's like, you said it multiple times, like, I wanted to be great. I wanted to be the best, but you never came up with like, what are the steps that are actually going to take you there? So now it's like this super stressful thing. Cause you're like, well, I want to be the best, but I'm not there yet. And I don't get it. And you're tripping. Right. And then when you break it down into that process, it becomes so much easier. But then the confidence comes because of the preparation, right? Your confidence on the field comes from knowing that you've put the work in the film room, in the gym, nutrition wise. Like that was the biggest thing for me. Like I remember in high school and through some times in like summer football and sometimes throughout university, it was just like, man, like I know no one has worked as hard as me, or I know no one has done the things that I've done to get here in terms of training and whatever. So it's like that was where all of my confidence on the field came from. Cause I knew like I put in the work. I've watched the film. I've studied my playbook. I've trained my ass off. Like that's where all of my confidence come from. So I think for you, those are the big things that I kind of heard. It's like when you have that process and you figured out what are the specific things and you really break it down, like that seems to be the recipe for when you flourish. And right, we see that with almost all athletes across the board, but then we also see how putting in the work influences your confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So again, that's me just trying to kind of extract, you know, this was your story. What are the things for other people that they can try and learn about it? It's like, yeah, figure out what those steps are, like specifically, you know, whether that's on your own or if you have a coach like Coach Mike, where, you know, you were fortunate enough to have him sit down with you and say, these are the things that we're going to work on. But it's like, give yourself some direction, put a plan together, figure out what are the steps that you have to take, because it's going to make things way simpler, way less stressful. Mm-hmm. And it's going to actually get you to where you want to go instead of focusing just so much on the outcomes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Cool.
And with putting in that extra work, too, it's putting in another thing, too, that's important is putting in meaningful work.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I remember seeing people who, like, stay after practice and do, like, you know, I'm doing all these extra routes and stuff. And it's like, yeah, but you're doing all these extra, like, whatevers, but it's not good form. Like, it's not. It's not meaningful. It's not, or it's like it doesn't translate over to what we do.
Yeah. Or my favorite, and we saw this a lot with a bunch of people. It's like I got coached how to do things a certain way in practice. Now I'm going to stay after practice and do extra work the way that I like to do it. And it's like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? It's just kind of like, do you not feel like you're a dog chasing its tail here? If you're going to be coached one way and then you're going to put in this extra work to get better, but then you're just going to go on the back end after practice and screw it all up by just doing whatever the hell you like to do. So like, I think that's a huge thing that you added in there about making sure that your work is meaningful and purposeful and actually productive, right? Like don't mistake, you know, the act of just doing something for it actually paying off. You know, you only get the results if you're doing things the way that they're supposed to be done. All right. So I think if we're still going through your story here, that kind of takes us up to the combine. So you were a national combine invite.
Yeah.
It was like out west or something when you went, eh?
It was in Winnipeg. Yeah.
Okay. So you went through the combine experience. Anything there? How was that experience? Sitting down with teams?
Sitting down with teams was cool. It was cool because you first off got to meet the people you see on TV kind of firsthand, like the head coaches, the general managers, you got to see them firsthand and talk to them. And then you were answering questions, but they'd also like, why should we draft you ahead of every other offensive lineman here? Like, what makes you special? And it's like, man, like I got to figure out, like I can't just say like, I'm a good offensive lineman, because they don't want that. They want like, what are you confident in yourself, and like, what are we gonna see? And then also like, some were just like easy peasy, kind of not easy peasy, but like relaxed, having a conversation, joking around, and others were like, all right, no, like we actually need this position like really bad, and like we're looking for the person who like fits our scheme. Like, what are you gonna be? Like, we want to see if you can handle the stress of this interview. In order to like, are you gonna crack under the stress of this interview? Like, and then we draft you and you crack under the stress of a game, or are you gonna like do well in this interview and flourish, and then when we draft you, we don't have to worry about you cracking under pressure, like things
Let me
like that.
guess.
So it was
Was
just
that the Argos?
no, the Argos was actually really cool. I had met him a bunch of times, and so when we sat down and talked, like it was just like fun, actually. Like all those stories I heard about the Argos, like it was just fun. Like it was just me and the assistant GM, and we were just like joking around.
Yeah,
For
no,
the recruiting guy,
everybody that I knew going through the combine, like in my early years at Guelph, all the way through up until pretty much now, like almost everyone that's gone to the Nationals been like, man, the interview with Toronto was so hard. They just shred you. They just try and see if they can break you.
yeah, I
Which
heard
I mean,
that
I
too.
kind of dig that. I kind of dig that approach. Like I've been, in terms of like hiring employees and stuff, like I've been the interviewer a few times, and like I love just like, you're kind of coming out of left field, but I just love putting the pressure on people and just seeing, can I break you? Like, how do you handle pressure? How do you deal with adversity? You can learn a lot through that. So combine was a cool experience, then that leads to draft day. How was that?
Draft day was fun and exciting, but it was also really stressful, and like more stressful than really it should have been. Like, so like invite all the family over. The family came over, like friends, just kind of ready to watch the draft. And so the first 2 rounds were aired on TV, and the third round you had to switch over to laptop to watch the rest of the live broadcast. So it was like, okay. So I was sitting downstairs with my family, and in the basement we were watching, and a buddy of mine came over who like I grew up playing with. We trained together. Like he pushed me to like be an animal and stuff like that. Like he used to come over to my house, and we used to like just do like backyard workouts of like just sprinting up and down the street as many times as we could, holding wall sits for as long as we could, like 10-minute wall sits just cuz. And it's like, okay. And like Tyler Woods is his name, and he's just a fun dude. So he came over, and it was like, oh, like this is cool. It's kind of like coming together. And then he's like, man, why are you so nervous? Like, you're gonna get drafted. It's like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm just nervous. And so like then the second round ended, and it was like, okay, we got to try and get on computers. And I was like finding a computer, and like the live stream wasn't working yet. And all of a sudden, like Sam, my fiance, was like, Andrew. And I was like, what? And she's like, Andrew, look at this. I was like, Sam, I don't have time right now. Like, what? And then look, and it's like Ottawa Redblacks selected Andrew Pickett, and it's like, oh, okay, like yay. Yeah. And then got a call from the GM like right after, and talked to Marcel and talked to Coach Campbell, and like then got getting ready for camp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember the draft day. I had the high school kids at the gym, and like you guys, normally we keep the older university or pro athletes in their own group, and then the high school and youth athletes kind of have their own group. But sometimes you guys overlapped, and all the high school boys were all fired up for the draft. So we had a workout that night. We actually set the laptop up in the gym, and we were streaming it. So we all got to see when your name got called. So you get drafted by the Redblacks. What was it? Third round? Is that what you said?
Yeah, third round.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what pick exactly, but
yeah, it's all good. You don't have it like tattooed on your chest or whatever.
No.
So that was 2018.
Yeah.
2018. So you've been with the Redblacks for 2 years now. Let's talk about that experience. Obviously, I know there's been some turbulence in that chapter, but I think it's worth kind of hearing you share that story and talking about whatever you feel like talking about throughout all that.
Yeah. So we'll start at the beginning and kind of go from there.
Mm-hmm.
So training camp started, and we had the rookie camp at first, obviously, and again, it came down to like, okay, like I know I got drafted fairly high. You know, I know the organization has confidence in me, so like I have confidence in myself. So rookie camp, like played with confidence, and Mark Cordy was their first round draft pick, and I had played actually Team Canada with him way back in, what was it, 2013, I think.
Yeah.
So like we knew each other and stuff like that, and then there's this other guy, Armando, who we got talking to, and like we kind of like we all started jamming, and like Jacob Cheat, like it was just a good rookie class. And so like we're all jamming, and it's like, okay, I'm confident. Like these other guys haven't played in the CFL, so like the defensive linemen we're going against, so like, you know, they're learning too. Like it's both learning, and you know, got used to the pro system and whatever. And then the pros came, and it was like, these are men. Like these are full blown men. Like we had John Gott, who had like this big beard, and Sir Vincent Rogers, who like was just like this like awesome, like great dude, but just like I've never experienced like a tackle that was like this like badass, this terrible, like there's nowhere else to describe this. Like and then you had like Alex Mateus and Nolan McMillan show up, and it's like all these like guys you see play on TV and like big name guys like show up, and it's like, hey, this is wild. Like I'm playing with these offensive linemen now. And then it's like, okay, like you're learning, you're adjusting, you're, you know, trying to get better each day and trying to grow. And like, you know, there are some days where you had like really bad days, and it's like, okay, we got to pick one thing and just like, let's just work it. Like, let's get better. This is rock. Like, this was a bad day. Let's fix it. Let's get better. And then you had days that were really good days, and it's like, man, like that was honestly like a great practice. Like I'm very happy with the way that went. And so things were kind of going, and I was kind of fluctuating between like with the second taking teams with the second group and the third group. Like I would do both. So it's like, okay, like we're growing, we're learning. And then the preseason game came, and it was like, okay, we're going to the preseason game. Let's just take it easy. Let's just have fun out there. Like we're playing in front of a crowd we've never had before. Let's just enjoy the sights, enjoy the sounds, and play. And like I was pretty pumped about the way I played that game. Obviously, it wasn't all perfect. Like I would be lying to you if I sat here and be like, I played the best game of football I ever played in my life. Like I looked amazing. Like no, there was some place that was like, man, that looks really good, and there was some place where it's like, okay, you looked like you. It was tough.
Yeah.
It was tough, especially later in the games when it's like, oh my gosh, I can't catch my breath. Like holy.
Yeah. And a grown man who's been playing pro ball for 10 years is coming at you, and you got to try and block him. Meanwhile, you're a bright-eyed rookie who's absolutely bagged, trying to just keep your head above water.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Yeah, I was doing pretty good. You know, getting into some little like shoving matches with some defensive linemen, which is always a good thing as an offensive lineman. And you know, was just fired up. And then I think it was the fourth last play. Maybe it was the fifth. Like just a simple inside zone. Somebody fell in the back of my knee, like felt a pop, and like you can watch on film, like me grab it and like, oh, and then it was like, okay, wait a second here. Okay, Andrew, how bad does it actually hurt? Like, is this just something like you got your foot stepped on, or is this something like it actually like injured? It's like, well, it doesn't hurt right now. It's like, okay, let's get up. So got up, did another play, and it's like, okay, how did it feel that play? Well, it didn't feel terrible. Okay. Took on a bull rush, and it's like, how did it feel that play? It's like, it felt okay. Like, it didn't feel great, but it feels okay. And so I was like, okay. Do the next play. And then the next play, like, went to a linebacker and, like, ended up, like, getting in a pile and falling over. And it was like, okay, something doesn't feel like it feels off. I don't know what it is, but it feels off. So let's just take a knee, live to fight another day. Did not look at the time clock and how much time was left at all. Like, just, like, let's live another day. Went off the field. The final two plays happened. They took me inside. The head trainer and the doctor there, like, took a look at my knee, and they're like, yeah, it's not ligament. we think you just pinched a cartilage in your knee, not the meniscus, but like something else. So it's like, okay. They're like, yeah, you should be good. We'll give you a couple days. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Like, that is best case scenario. So then, training camp, kind of continued on training camp, and then went, a day of like not practicing, then a day of like just individual stuff, then kind of got back into full pads and like kind of tweaked it again. And it's like, oh, that hurts. And then like the trainer came over and like, let's test everything. Let's have you do like jumps and stuff. And like, yep, did those. Does it hurt? No, it doesn't hurt. Okay, then like you should still be good. You might have just repinched it. So I was like, okay. And we were playing Toronto that next game, which was in Guelph, which I was super fired up for. It's like, man, I want to play in this game. And the other thing is we were sitting all our starters. So it was time for like the second string guys to like start and play. So I was like, I gotta play for this game. I just gotta tough it out. I remember Coach Campbell coming up to me being like, hey, we're not checking out your toughness right now. Okay, we know you're tough. So like if it's bothering you, like, be smart about this. Don't play the long run game. Don't just try and tough it out and then it ends up being way worse than it is. It's like, yeah, you're right. So played, and then they ended up bringing me to Toronto, and like I got to dress, but I didn't play in Toronto. And then it was like, okay, we had the first week bye, so we got a couple weeks. We went through cuts, and then we had first week bye and had those first couple days off. So cuts was stressful because you're like, man, I've done this whole camp. Like, am I going to get sent back to Guelph? Am I going to like make it through? Like, kind of what's happening? And like, you have the people kind of coming through and like, okay, I need this person to come see the general manager. And it's like, okay,
The Grim
my
Reaper.
name wasn't called. Yeah. So you're like, hey, my name wasn't called. Good. And so then I remember being like, didn't eat breakfast because like too stressed. And then it came lunchtime, and me and my buddy Armando were like there, and we're like, man, like I know this is bad and everyone's too stressed to eat, but like I'm hungry, like really, really hungry. So we're like, okay, like we'll hop on the elevator, go upstairs. So we hop in the elevator, and then the general manager, assistant general manager, like all the front office people hop on this elevator with us. It's like, this is so scary. This is like, we just wanted to get food, and like now this is stressful, and like I don't know if I'm hungry anymore. And then step off the elevator, and like Marcel, who's the general manager of the Redblacks, calls me and like, hey, Andrew, can I just have a quick word with you? And I was like, this is the most heartbreaking thing. I just wanted lunch. I'm not even going to get lunch. I'm going to get sent home before I get food. And he's like, yeah. And then my buddy goes and sits at a table. Like Armando sits at a table because like he didn't want to get food without me, especially not if I like, this is a goodbye. So Marcel's like, yeah, so we really liked what we saw. We want to keep developing you and keep you on the practice roster. We're going to move you up to active roster just because of injuries and the way things are working right now for the first little bit. But like, this is the way things are going to go. It's like, oh, nice. Like, yeah. So like quickly give a thumbs up to Armando so he knows like this isn't bad. Like, we're good. And then like, nice. Like fired up. Went through the process of like making the team. Wanted to fly home and surprise my family. So like bought a plane ticket, flew home. Then I was like, okay, how do I get from Toronto to Kitchener? Okay, I'll just get an Uber because Uber's super cheap. Was not super cheap.
It had to be over $100.
It was, I think, over $2. Because the other thing is, too, is
could have just called me, man. I would have picked you up.
Well, man, I didn't think of it. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, let's just do it. And then it's like, man, like, I got like, they only had like 2 classes. Like, instead of the regular Uber to come pick you up, they only had like the limos and like the high-end limos, which were like they only had like the airport services that could pick you up. And it was like, all right, cool, sweet, whatever, YOLO. I'm
pro now. I'm a big deal.
Yeah. And then I remember like sitting in the car, and like the guy's like, oh, what are you doing, like going to Kitchener? And I was like, oh, like I'm actually just going home to visit my family. He's like, oh, like where are you coming from? I was like, oh, I'm coming from Ottawa. He's like, what are you doing in Ottawa? It's like, oh, like I guess I work there. I guess it's work. Yeah. It's like, oh, what kind of work do you do? It's like, oh man, like I actually play for like in the CFL for the Ottawa Redblacks, and that's kind of when it was like the first moment of it clicking. Like, man, I made it. Like,
yeah,
all this hard work, all these years of like, all the struggles, the doubts, the excitements, the ups and downs. Like, it's all finally come together. Like, this is cool. So then got home, visited my family, grabbed my car, we're feeling good. My buddy texted me, Armando, who also made the team, and like we were roommates together. Like we just moved into this new apartment. Just texted me and said like he's actually getting released. So then I had to drive back to Ottawa and like say goodbye to him, and that was tough. And then it was like, man, like nothing's for sure. Like just because you made the team doesn't mean you're automatically on the team. Like you still got to keep working. So it's like, oh man, okay. And then so I was like, oh, I'm pretty nervous about that. And then that first practice we were doing one-on-ones, and then went to plant, and like my knee just tweaked, and it was like, whoa, that hurt. And I was like, man, my knee has been feeling fine the past couple of days. Like going home really helped it. I don't understand what's going on with this cartilage. So then the trainer came over. He's like, hey, like how does your knee? Like we already had done, I think, 1 or 2 team periods, and like my knee was okay through those. And he's like, yeah, like what happened? I was like, man, it just like I don't know what it was. Like it shifted, it pinched. It's like, oh, okay. It's like, why don't you jump? Like try jumping. Like did all the tests again, and it's like jumping and pivoting and planting. And he's like, yeah, like if it seems okay, like let's just like keep practicing on it. So kept practicing on it. He's like, come see me after practice. So went and saw him. He's like, how does it feel? It's like, it feels good, but it definitely feels like it's swelling up again. Like after all the tweaks, it would swell up. He's like, okay, there must be something more. We'll have the doctor come in tomorrow, check you out, and then probably send you for an MRI. I was like, okay. So doctor came in, checked my knees, like, it must be meniscus. So I don't know if it's a torn meniscus or a pinched meniscus. We're going to get you an MRI just to look at the meniscus and figure out kind of where we want to go rehab, because both rehabs are very different. It's like, okay, that sounds good. So I went and got an MRI, and then it came back, and it was like, went to meetings, I think, and then, or no, by the time I got back, stopped in to see Marcelo, the head trainer, and he was like, yeah, I have some bad news for you, actually. You completely tore your ACL and partially tore your meniscus. It was like, okay, this is awful and devastating. And then comes the thoughts of like, okay, where do we go from here? Where do we whatever? Like, what's the next step? So thankfully, my agent, who's like a great guy, cannot say enough good things about him, Rob Fry.
Big shout out to Rob.
Huge shout out to Rob.
Represents a few different tag athletes. Gabe as well, and Newts. Big shout out, Rob.
Mm-hmm. And Ziggy.
And Ziggy. You're right. So there you go. I should meet this guy.
You really should. It's a fantastic time.
So Rob,
so I text Rob and like, hey Rob, I just found out like I tore my ACL, because he'd been texting me like, hey, I saw or I heard you tweak your knee. Hey, how's the knee going? Any updates on the knee? And then like, yeah, so I just tore it. And he called me and was like, okay, here's kind of what the next steps are. Here's what could happen. Here's what's most likely to happen. Here's what might happen. Here's all the different scenarios, just so you have a big picture idea of what's upcoming for you. I was like, okay, that's great. And then just like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Like, how's your mental like right now? It's like, oh, it's going good. But I also remember calling him, and I was pulling into the stadium, and it's underground parking. So like, I remember like pausing as much as I could outside, because it was like, I'm going to lose cell reception as soon as I go underneath this garage. But like, this was such a bad time for me to call him. I don't know why I chose this time. So, and then somebody came behind me. It's like, okay, I got to go in the garage. And him being like, I can't hear you. What? And it's like, no, I'm so sorry, man. So yeah, so then like kind of the next day went by, and like nobody came and talked to me. And then the next day went by and still hadn't heard anything. And then I was like, okay, like this is weird. And then like the next day it's like, hey Rob, like, have you heard anything yet? Like, what's going on? I'm kind of like losing my mind waiting for somebody to come and tell me like, hey, it's time to pack up your things and go home. Like, because then also you have the thoughts of like, okay, like I hurt my knee, I can't go back and play my last year at Guelph if they send me back, because I'm going to do rehab. Okay, well, if I go back, like I'm going to have to do school, and like I'm not going to, like I can't get a summer job because I don't have an ACL, like, so I won't be, like, how am I going to pay for like school? Like, what, where do we go from here? It's like, yeah, like I haven't heard it. And he's like, let me give you a call quick. I was like, okay. He's like, I talked to Marcel, the GM, and he, it sounds like they have a lot of confidence in you, and they want to keep you injured so you can keep learning and keep kind of getting ready with the scheme and do your rehab with the team. And it's like, that sounds awesome. Like, it's great to have that feeling of like the team has confidence in me. It's great to like have that feeling of like, okay, like I kind of have a certainty in my future. And it's like, okay, that's good. And so like it was nice to have that, but it was at the same time, it was like as the kind of season progressed, like, you know, if there was like fan events or whatever, there's like a, man, I feel bad for like autographing somebody because like who wants an autograph of like an injured guy, right? Like, who wants,
Hey,
or like,
can you sign my authentic jersey? Or like, are you sure you really want
yeah,
that?
or like sign it like somebody else. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I remember when I was at Guelph, we were doing like the flag football camp, and some kid came and he had a like legit, full on legit Peyton Manning Denver Broncos jersey, and this kid's like, Mister, he like runs over. He's like, "Will you sign my jersey?" I was like, "No." I'm like, dude, I'll sign anything else for you, but if you go home with a $200 Peyton Manning jersey with an Andrew Graham signature on it, your mom is gonna find me and castrate me. Like, I am not defacing and devaluing that jersey with my stupid autograph. Go find a receipt on the ground. I'll sign that, buddy, but I'm not signing your jersey. So you obviously, you know, you're struggling a little bit with like I don't know, maybe to paraphrase, like a little bit of an identity crisis. You know, like
Yeah.
on the surface, the outside world is looking at you and treating you like a professional football player, but internally, your narrative is kind of like, well, I'm not a professional football player. I'm the injured guy.
Yeah.
Which is not the case, without a doubt. Like, you're on the team for a reason. Obviously, you earned the right to be there, and those coaches believed in you, and that's why they kept you through that injured process. But
Mm-hmm.
from a competitor standpoint, like, you know, all true competitors, that's the voice in their head. Like, completely different scenario. But my first year, when I was on scout team, like, I didn't dress my first year at Guelph. You know, people are like, "Oh, are you on like the football team?" And like in my head, I'm like, yeah, I am, but like, I sit in the fucking stands on Saturday. Like, you know, I don't feel like I'm on that team, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I can relate to what you're going through. So that was 2018.
That
That
was
was that was
2018.
that was your
That
first
was the
year.
season. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the season of like,
So then you get through the season. You were with the Red Blacks the whole year.
yeah, they kept me the whole year. So I got to experience like, you know, I got to experience the year. I got to experience going to the Grey Cup, the playoffs. I got to experience all that. Very thankful for them and like everything they gave me, the opportunity they gave me and continue to give me. And yeah, so thankful with that. Then
And
the
so,
season ended,
yeah.
unfortunately, with a Grey Cup loss. And like, I was like, okay, next year's our season. Like, we know that they had confidence in me. We know that we had a good game, that like first preseason game. We know we can compete here. Let's like, it's time to go in this off season. Like, what do we want to do? Okay, like we want to get my strength back. Like we want to. So came with you and like we came up with goals and like, okay, what can we do? What can't we do? Where do we, and like you communicated with the trainers too, and like this is where we're going. You know, took all that into account and just worked on like, okay, getting strong. But I also like in doing that myself forgot, like didn't do, looking back, it's easy to say this. At the time, it was like, oh, I'm doing everything I can. But looking back, you know, there was little things like little stretches that I should have been doing. There's little, like, you know, I could have been doing yoga to keep helping my flexibility there. I could have been doing, you know, little things to keep like making sure my knee stability is good. And instead of just focusing so much on like getting strength back and like getting back to like playing numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the biggest one is nutrition. I was just like, man, I was injured and like I was getting stronger with you because like when you go to tag, you get strong, baby. On a serious note, though, those gains were insane. I was so fired up about the gains I was having strength wise and like agility wise, and like I was just like pumped with my off-season training, but I forgot the nutrition portion. So my weight when I played in university, I was somewhere between like 298 and kind of like maxing out at 310. Like that was like, you know, pushing it, you know. And then when I went with Ottawa that first year I was like 313 is what I weighed in at the start of camp. And then for like didn't pay attention because I was like, man, like it doesn't matter what my weight is as long as I can like still move and stuff. So I ended up showing up to camp at 323, which was 10 pounds heavier. And so I was like, you know what? We'll start losing weight once camp starts. Like we'll be okay. And then yeah, so it was like, hey, we're fired up for the season, start of the season, still nervous because, like, obviously you haven't played in a year. And, like, you're nervous or whatever, and you're like, man, like, okay, let's get into this. You proved yourself last year, let's prove yourself again. And then first day of training camp, like first practice, so it's a 4-hour practice, so technically two-hour practices that are back to back. And so went out for the first practice and, like, you know, did pretty good. Was knocking some of the rust off in some areas, but, like, for the most part, like, man, this was going pretty good. And the second practice, I was just kind of posting with somebody, and then all of a sudden my other knee just, like, popped, and it was like, oh no. So I went down on the ground and, like, oh man, this one hurts. Went through the whole assessment period again, and, like, yeah, it turns out I did the exact same thing to my other leg. And then had a conversation with Marcel, the general manager, and he was like, it's up to you where you want to go. Like, if you want to like keep going, we'll, like, you can do rehab here again and, like, keep learning again and kind of be around the team. But if you want to call it quits, we understand that too. And I was like, no, if it's my other knee, like, if it was the same knee, then it would be a different story, but it's the other knee. So I'm ready to go. And then, but then I lost that foundation of, okay, like, I earned my place here, because now it's just I got injured and, like, I didn't even get to prove myself. I didn't even do a full practice. So then there was that mental game.
Yeah, dude, honestly, like, and so, yeah, that was, you know, that was like a shit day. Like, no bows or any frilly shit on that. Let's just say for what it was. That was a shit day, man. Like, I remember you texted me, and obviously, like, you know, so first, from a coaching standpoint, like, first day of camp, like, that's always kind of a nerve-wracking day too, because, you know, of, like, last year, it's like, I don't even know, what do we have, like, I'm just going to say 6, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong with my number, but we had like 6 guys into camp, 6 tag athletes into camp on day 1 last year for the CFL. And so that's a nerve-wracking day for me too. It's like, you know, like, I tried my absolute best to take my job and my responsibilities very seriously. And although it doesn't look like it maybe on the surface, because I like to keep things light and have some laughs and keep the sessions fun, but, like, I do take that responsibility seriously. So that first day of camp, my guts always turn in a little bit. Like, did I do enough? Did I prepare these guys enough? Like, did we do the right things? Like, you know, same kind of ideas you have as an athlete when you go into first day of camp. Like, that's kind of what I experienced first day of camp. And then, you know, all the boys text me after practice. Everyone, things feel good, feeling amazing, whatever. And so when you left, like, we were really, like, we were really confident with how you're, like,
Yeah.
in it from training perspective. Like, your strength was actually above where it was before the injury. Movement wise, you were moving well. Like you said, really the only thing that on paper that we kind of fucked up that off season was the nutrition and the body comp. But in terms of everything else, like, from all the mentors in the strength world and whatever you want to call performance training, whatever, like, from everyone I've learned from, like, you know, the way that off season went, we checked all the boxes, right? Like, everything was balanced in terms of, you know, not just living in the weight room. Like, we were on the field multiple times a week. We were doing speed, agility, change of direction, like, you name it, tempos, conditioning, position specific, like, everything, we were doing it. And I was feeling so good. And I was so happy and, like, confident for you. And I remember all the boys are texting me after that first day, and you text me and you're like, I think it was like, hey dude, can I tell you something? Or it was like something like that. And I'm not gonna lie, I was, like, on the back porch having a beer, because I was like, you know, essentially it was like fucking rights. We made it through day 1. Everyone did awesome. Everyone has messaged me. And they're feeling good. You were the last one that messaged me, and you're like, can I tell you something? And I'm on the porch having a beer, and I'm feeling pretty good. And I'm like, oh dude, this guy's about to tell me he's repping with the ones right now. Like, I honestly, that was my first, cause you left moving and looking so good. I was like, dude, he's repping with the ones. Like he said he's going to call me and he's going to fucking tell me he's repping with the ones right now. Like, I'm so jacked up. And then I see your name flash across my screen, answer the phone. I'm all jacked up. I pick it up. Yo, what's going on? Blah, 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 blah. And you're like, so, and I'm like, what? Like, and you told me, dude, honestly, that like to this day, and I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I'm thankful, but to this day, I think that's the worst phone call I've ever had. That was absolutely gutting, because I saw everything that you went through and I saw the work that you did and the work that we did together to get to that point. And I was so excited for you to get that opportunity again, and then to have it, you know, yanked out from under your feet. Like, I fucking stayed up that whole night. I didn't go to bed, and I went through every program that for your whole off season. I was like, where did I fuck up? Where did I make the mistakes? Where did we miss the boat? Like, how did this happen? And it was just, and that was just me as the coach. So like, from you as an athlete, like, I can imagine what you were going through was probably what I was going through times probably 10,000 or maybe 1,000,000. Who knows? Like,
Yeah, it wasn't fun. I remember the original kind of when it happened, I called you and was like, this is kind of the worst case scenario. This is the best case, is that's not torn. Everything's gonna be okay. And then I remember being like, okay, like, what do we do? What do we do? It's like, okay, texting like my mom, my dad, my like girlfriend, my sister, and like, okay, like something might be off a little bit here. And then the little part of your back mind's like, man, it's not feeling too good.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, yeah. And then you're sitting there like, okay, what could I have done differently? What could I have, like, why did this happen? Like, why, like, is this a sign? Like, what's going on? Like, is this just me? I'm not meant to play. Like, could I have competed? And then, like, since you only have that half a day of training camp film, when, like, the year before, I'd go back and I'd watch that Montreal game and be like, okay, like, you know, on days where it was tough and I didn't know if I could, like, do it, and it was like, oh, I'm losing confidence in myself. Go back and watch, like, the good practices or the Montreal game and be like, okay, like, look, you can play. And then this one, it's like, I could watch that half a practice, but in half a practice, there's so much good and bad happening, especially on your first day back, that it's like, oh man, this is just stressful. Like, this is just, like, I didn't get to prove to myself. Like, I didn't get to prove anything.
Mm-hmm. So how do you get over that hump?
Well, there's a couple things. There was an initial moment of like, okay, you can feel bad for yourself today. Then there was, okay, let's pinpoint and find something, kind of like, let's break it down. Well, the strength was coming back, you know, moving well, everything like we said. And it's like nutrition. Okay, like, my weight was out of wire. So let's get this weight back. Like, let's work on consciously losing this weight. So like, okay, let's try some things and get this weight under control. So started losing weight kind of through the season. And it's like, okay, let's ask a lot of questions, and then, like, let's do a lot of extra little things during this recovery process to make sure both of our knees are doing good for next season. Like, if we're going to give this a go, we have to give it a go 110%. Like, there's no, oh, I'll give it a go and kind of see where it takes me. It's like, no, either you're all in at this point or you're all out. Like, there is no middle ground. So it's like, okay, I'm going all in. So with that came having conversations with my family and like my fiance and with you. It's like, you know, I think staying in Ottawa might be the best shot for me right now at this point, just because, you know, if my knee does anything weird during training or anything, or if there's something that, like, it's not quite getting, I can have those therapists, like, have hands-on, like, watching me at all times and, like, okay, let's fix this. And, like, oh, your mechanics here are a little off. This is coming from this. Like, let's fix it. And then they partnered up with, like, a Canadian Strength too, or not a Canadian Strength, Canadian Strength, which is a fitness place. They deal with a lot of, like, OHL guys and, like, a lot of CFL guys. And they were like, okay, like, let's get this nutrition, like, let's come up with, like, a complete nutrition plan and, like, break it down where you know what's going on and, like, this is what's going on and this is what we're looking for. And it's like, okay, so now so far it's looking like it's worked out up until this COVID stuff, but, like, it was nice having that, losing weight and, like, okay, my body's feeling pretty good. Like, we can do this. Let's get our confidence back.
Yeah. No, and I know that was a conversation that that you were really dreading to have with me about,
Yeah.
sticking in Ottawa. And conversely, I was like dreading it, but for the opposite reason, because you were like dreading that conversation, being like, man, how do I tell him that I'm staying in Ottawa? And I was dreading that conversation because, like, how do I tell him he's not welcome here? He has to stay in Ottawa. Like, how do I tell him that?
Oh
Because
man, I remember being like, this is gonna be like, I
it's
think I
like a
texted you
breakup.
first.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, I came up with this, like, I had like Sam like read it over, and I talked about it with Scarf too, because Scarf has helped me out through the whole process, like, as well. Like Jacob Scarfone, a guy we played with, a receiver who's with the Redblacks. He helped me out through the whole thing. Like, I can't say enough good things, and like how much he helped me out, because he had been through an ACL injury. So like,
Dude, that
I
guy's been
remember,
through the ringer.
yeah.
Holy shit, man.
So I remember when I first tore my ACL and he found out, he wasn't on the Redblacks yet. He hadn't signed with them. And he gave me a call and like, this is what to expect. I'll send you my programs of like how to break this down, like how it was broken down, so you kind of know what to expect each month. This is everything. So it's like, oh man, like sweet. Then he got signed to Ottawa, and like that was just because I like before it was like, man, I don't want to go and interact with like many of the guys, because like I'm not really like, they're all like balling out and like, oh, I'm sore this week. Like, yeah, me too. Let's keep grinding. And it's like, there's me on the sideline. Like, no, I'm feeling fresh because I haven't like done much.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, and then he came and was like, okay, like got interacting with some of the guys, got me out of my little like slump, and like picked me up and like made sure I was doing good and checking in on me and stuff. And then the next season, like next year, like the second year when I tore my other ACL, like felt bad and like helped me out, would like come visit me when I was just after my surgery, and like just make sure I was doing okay, and like just helped me out immensely. So like very thankful that he was there with me through all that as well.
Yeah.
Just giving me guidance and making sure my head was on straight.
Yeah. No, big fan of Scarfone myself, as an athlete, but as a dude as well. Scarf's top shelf. Yeah. No, I think for this off season, the discussion that, I was, you had your girlfriend and all these people kind of reading over your text to me. Like, I was basically, it's like, I know we're going to have this conversation. Like, I knew when it was coming up, it was like around the end of the season, getting ready to start the off season. It's like, man, like, I love the guy, but I was like, in my head, I'm like, the investment of time and energy and effort that Ottawa has made into like you as a player, I was like, if he's trying to come back here, like I need to tell him that he's not allowed. Like you have to go and stay in Ottawa for the full year and show them how grateful you are and how committed you are every single day, right? Like you have to show face. You have to say, hey, listen, man, like I wasn't just taking this for a couple of years and now I'm just going to continue to do the same things. You're like, I'm going to show up. And I don't think it's necessarily, like obviously I'll take some ownership of the process. Anytime an athlete gets injured, like I'm taking ownership of that, right? Whether or not it's true, that's how you handle things as a coach. But deep down, do I necessarily think everything that we did is what led to the injuries? Like, no, I don't. Honestly, I don't.
No.
And I know we've had that conversation before, but it's like, you need to be there. You need to show those coaches, you need to show the front office that I'm here, baby, and we're giving this a go. And you need to see me every single day. You need to see the work that I'm putting in. So when we actually got to that conversation, it was like so nice because you were like, hey, I don't know how to break it to you. I think I should stay in Ottawa. And I was like, yeah, like this makes it so much easier because I was going to do my absolute best to force you to stay in Ottawa. So I'm happy we're on the same page. Now let's just hang out and talk.
Well, that was the tough part that I now realize I never finished my initial train of thought with Jacob Scarfone, but like talk to Jacob Scarfone about kind of best options and everything like that. And then when I got like everyone to read over the text, like, I want to make sure he knows that I'm not doing this because I don't have confidence in him, because I have all the confidence in the world in you and your training program and everything like that. Like, I want to make that very clear. And I want him to make sure that he knows, like, if it wasn't these circumstances, like I would be back. But like the way things have fallen like this, and then you're like, no, man, I think that's a good route. And it's like, I was worried he was gonna be so devastated.
No, dude. Like that's the thing. Like, for me, the biggest thing is within my business, it's always athletes first. And in my life as a person, I try my absolute best to put people first, right? And it's like when it comes to me and how I operate tag, I'm not just trying to do what's best for me, or I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, well, man, like you got to come back here and do that. Like, fuck that, man. That's not who I am. It's like, let's work together. What is the best case for Andrew Pickett? And let's come up with that scenario. And if that involves, if the only part that I have in that process is this conversation, then so be it. I don't give a shit. Like, let's make sure we're putting you in the best position. So, but again, I know for the most part, in terms of the people that do what I do, most people aren't like that. And that's not to like put myself on a pedestal or anything, but that's why I got into this. Like, a lot of coaches are doing it for themselves, whether that's in sport or in the private sector, kind of doing what I do. And that shit drives me nuts, man. Like, I hate it. I will never, ever take credit for anything. Like a lot of the high school kids, oh dude, the only reason I'm going into university this strong is because of you. It's like, I didn't lift those weights. Like, I didn't make you show up at the gym. Like, I just helped you, right? Like, you don't give credit for your work to other people. Take ownership and take pride in that. And that's one thing that I always try and refocus, because I don't want it. The only success that I own is mine. Right? Whether that's as an athlete or as a coach or in business, whatever, like I'll take mine, but don't give me yours. You take credit for yours. And that's a big thing. So that's what made that conversation so easy. Cause I was like, dude, I really hope he's staying in Ottawa. So to wrap it up here, man, what are some of the things that you want to say to, people that are going through the COVID bullshit? What are you doing to kind of make sure you're leaving no stone unturned? And what would your advice to other people that are going through this be?
Man, don't make excuses, find a way is kind of my motto right now for myself personally. Okay, I've been on this diet a long time, and like grocery stores are nuts right now, and like it is demanding, but at the same time, like, okay, don't just call it off and all of a sudden now I'm eating just junk. Like, still stick to it as best as you can, like as much as you can. And then workouts too. Like, obviously I don't have the benefit of being at home. Like, thankfully I have like a barbell and some weights and a little bench, but I don't have like a squat rack and all the weights to support, what I'd be doing normally at like 3-rep max and like what I'd normally be doing for certain things. So it's like, okay, let's find a way. How can we adjust this? How can we, whether it be like filling up a backpack with books, or whether it be running up and down my street until like for my sprints, or pushing a car for sled bushes, like finding something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the one thing that I've been saying to all the athletes that I'm talking to right now, going through this, and the message to people is the exact same as what you're saying, man. Find solutions, not excuses. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is completely unprecedented in what's going on in the world of, in the world, but also mainly for what we're talking about right now, the world of athletics. And there's so many kids, like, a handful of kids that work with me. It's like grade 12 kids going in back for another year of high school, really needed this summer for football to try and help with getting some recruiting exposure. And I'm sure that's demoralizing for them to not at this point, they're probably not going to have that season. And I'm sure that's demoralizing, but it's like, okay, well, everybody that's coming out in your recruiting class is in the same boat. A lot of these kids are going to be making excuses like, what are you going to do right now, controlling what you can control to gain the edge, come out of this on top, right? Use this lull as your advantage, because a lot of people are going to look the other way and take their foot off the pedal and coast. But if you can take this time to stomp it down, double your efforts, and by any means possible just get better, then man, at the end of this, like, this actually might be what helps you.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big thing for people to learn about. Anything else any other wisdom you want to share with us?
Any other wisdom, man? Have confidence in your ability and know the difference between confidence and cockiness. Uh, you got to look in yourself in your eye, and you have to be your harshest critic at the same time. You know, when it comes to practice and stuff, and you getting better, you got to look at yourself and pick yourself apart and demand nothing except greatness. But then when game day comes, you have to be able to flip it and say, you know what, I know I know who I am. I know these are my strengths. I know I've been working hard at all this stuff. I've seen myself improve. Now it's time to go out there and show it. And have fun. Enjoy
Yeah.
the process as a whole. There's so many points where you add all this pressure and you get so worked up and built up, and then all of a sudden now it's like, oh, like it passed, and I remember being so stressed and relieved now, but I didn't fully enjoy everything about it.
Yeah. No, I agree with that 100%, man. Like, just, be your harshest critic, hold yourself to high standards, never loosen off, but don't let that make you miserable. Don't let that
Yeah.
ruin the fun for you. Because honestly, like, holding yourself to those standards and putting that kind of and that level of work in is the most fun.
Mm-hmm.
So enjoy it, and don't let that be a negative for you. Because I know myself personally, and kind of listening to you tell your story a little bit, like, I know being my own harshest critic a lot of times in my life, I didn't do it the right way, and it became a little bit more of a negative than it needed to be. And that's a lesson that I've learned, and it kind of sounds like you're in the same boat.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Any last things? If not,
No, that's
I'm gonna end the recording right now, but stay on because I want to
actually
chat with you.
one last thing.
Oh,
Do you still
pardon.
have the rubber chicken to hold the cones?
I do. It
Yeah.
went missing for a while last summer. There was like 3 weeks where it was gone, and I was like concerned, seriously. And one of the, like, Taylor, I think we went to the field to run around, and I was like, I don't know where my fucking chicken went. Taylor's like, well, like, who cares? It's a rubber chicken. I was like, no, it's the cone holder chicken, and it's special to me. Pickett stole that for us.
My lasting legacy at Tank.
Yeah, you stole the rubber chicken. I should have went and got it. Okay, hang on here. I'm going to end the recording. Thank you for all that you've shared with these fine folks.